Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, this is the slippery slope, but joined today by the one and only man of faith ministries, Brian. How are you, bro?
G'day,
Yeah.
Joe. Yeah, good,
It,
mate. How are you?
it is. We were just briefly saying. So today's the fifth of May. I had a good weekend. I got to celebrate my mother's birthday on Saturday, so I'd taken time off work and that, and I just my mother's birthday, and like we had a great time with family and that kind of thing, and it was good. But so, so Saturday evening, I think late in the because I kept looking it up, and when it came through, I was just in shock, as we were just saying. Could not believe part of me couldn't believe it, but I think it was more the fact of how much of a landslide of a win it ended up seeming to be for Labor for Albanese. Please share what's your thoughts? What's going on with you?
Well, I was absolutely shocked on Saturday night. I didn't see it coming, even though it talks about the corrupt state and things like that in Revelation in the Bible. We're due to expect it, but it was a shock with the actual landslide that came across. Now, I have one big opinion or two big opinions about that, is that this time it was a lot of your Gen Z and millennial voters that they're basically election virgins, so to speak. They don't know. They haven't seen the history of what Labor's done to the people in the past, and they believed the hype. They believed those influences that Albo and Bant use. Well, Bant it looks like he's going to get out anyway,
Oh,
but they
that's
believed the influences. That's sweet. But they believe the influences and the social media ads and things like that Albo put out. They didn't realize that he's just blatantly lying to them the whole way through. Now, the second thing is we could have, or a conservative side of politics could have had a chance if all of these minor conservative parties had have stood together and formed a bloc, and instead of having their own big egos, wanting to go their own ways and not joining, and all that did was fracture the vote for LNP, especially. I'm not a great fan of LNP, but it fractured that vote, which gave Labor so much more because so many people went to these smaller parties that wouldn't work together.
so. What do you make of the Palmer influence then? Was that I wonder, looking at those smaller parties, and I wonder whether uh, he puts people off in some ways, because I like some of the things that even last time and this time that the party talks about, but I always look at Clive Palmer's big face and wonder, have too many people put off by him and by some of his rhetoric, and look at it, because every time I see him, even though I think, yep, his party seems to have some good policies, but I mean, the other day I had to drive to Townsville. I'm going to Townsville, and I always think I'm going past that section in Townsville where, what was it, the copper refinery there? I think it got closed down. Was it the copper refinery? Got closed
Yeah,
down that he
something
owned.
like that.
And I always think, is there too much angst against Palmer? And is this what you're talking about? The kind of the small parties, if he had have maybe put all that money towards another effort instead of trying to do another Clive Palmer party, or is that what you're saying? Is it could have been done better?
I
What do you think?
I know Clive. I've spoken to Clive on a number of occasions, but Clive's biggest problem is history will always come back to haunt him, and his history is solely um, business orientated,
Hmm.
not his personal history. He is a nice bloke to talk to, but another problem he had, I think, it was detrimental changing to Trumpets of Patriots. He's now looking at going back to UAP, United Australia Party, which I think people knew from the last election. They got a fairly good turnout for the last election, percentage wise. So they should have actually kept with that name. I noticed Ralph Babet in all of his postings, he was putting Ralph Babet trumpet of patriots, but he was putting United Australia Party underneath that. And I think that's the way they should have kept going. But what I mean about the small parties is Clive offered to work with Pauline, One Nation.
Yep.
And there's been quite a few smaller parties that have been willing to work with a party like One Nation that's already got a bit of a stance in Parliament.
Yeah.
But Pauline doesn't want to work with anyone. It's Pauline's rule, and that's what I mean by the egos. We need These parties need to get off their high horses, the leaders of these small parties, and concentrate on what is good for the Australian people, not what's good solely for their party, because ultimately are they supposed to be there for the Australian people?
Yeah. Okay. Dutton, can you give us a breakdown of what happened? Why? Because you could see it. I think we can all agree. A few months ago, I was sitting there going, "Wow, Dutton has really come out with a point of difference,
Yes.
standing up, saying." And it seemed to me to really look like, okay, he's taken the Labor Party are going down this road where we don't know what kind of morals or ethics they really hold, or we see it and I felt like their morals are going downhill completely. And the LNP have said, no, we're going to go down a more traditional path and stand up for almost going back to like Judeo-Christian principles, morals, and heading down a more traditional path. That's the rhetoric that was coming out. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't understand why everyone seemed to get scared. Is that what happened, do you think?
I don't know if they got to get whether they became scared or whether or not the left-leaning Liberal side or Liberal faction in the LNP started to actually gain control and say this is the way we want to go, because Peter Dutton was doing well, but all of a sudden he clammed up. He wouldn't come out fighting, and he was being attacked left, right, and centre with social media ads and TV ads and things like that by the Labor Party, because that is what they are good at. Labor Party and Get Up are fantastic at insults, at attack, and that's how they succeed in a lot of things. We see that in the union movement as well. But the thing is that Dutton could have come out fighting for that, and he didn't. So in a way, he deserved to lose his seat, but it comes down to the machinations of the LNP again. Have done it for Australian people. We've now got Labor for another 3 years, and that's going to be detrimental to nearly all Australians, because I've already put out a word to ramp up our plans for our outreach, because I know there's going to be more desperate people on the streets and there's going to be more Australians put on the streets, because I'm yet to see these imports that Albo's bring in. I'm yet to see them on the streets. They've always got house and food, whereas Australians are the ones suffering with the cost of living and things like that. So we already know we're going to get hit hard now. We're already feeding between 180 and 220 people on a Monday night alone on the streets. So, and that's in a small regional town in Queensland. So we know other charities are going to be hit hard as well, just with this one decision that people have made to put Labor in for another 3 years. Another big thing is Christians are going to suffer, and suffer badly with this government for the next 3 years. I was dreading what's coming across.
Where was the Christian vote, do you think?
I can't even imagine to think where the Christian vote was. Like as I said to you earlier, with the numbers that Albo got or Labor Party got, there has to have been Christians that voted for Labor, which I can't fathom. I just can't understand it in my head that Christians would vote for policies that kill babies in the womb up to full term. And not only that, the fact that Labor are now going to want Australians, every taxpayer Australian, to pay foot the bill for that 80,000 plus abortions every single year that occur in Australia. And that's to my equation, that's going to be a minimum of a $30 million tax that Australians are now going to pay. And Christians are going to have to pay for that as well. And I don't like that idea.
Yeah. I don't know if you know the history of like what you say the modern day churches and that, but with a lot of Christian what do you sort like Bible colleges back. I'm probably talking 20 years ago. There was a pastor, a very big, well-known pastor, who was the head of the, I think it was Australian Christian Network. What was the years ago? You know, you had a big movement with the AOG, the Assembly of God Church, and they had a massive influence. And all the Christian Bible colleges that trained up pastors, a lot of them were heavily influenced by this group. And there was a specific pastor. I don't want to say his name because who knows what'll happen, but very well known. Uh, he was the head of the Bible colleges, and I'd known a few people that had gone through college, and I'd asked one of these pastors a couple of years ago. We were talking about politics, and my idea was, hey, you know, why that politics should be spoken about because it's within the church, especially when you're talking about things like what you said, like abortion and these kinds of things. You've got what and why isn't it? And he said to me, "No, no, Jay, politics is never spoken about from the pulpit." And I thought, well, knowing this person, knowing this pastor, and others that had gone through the same timeline, I could see that they'd all been influenced. And in my mind, it's come out of these institutes that have trained up these pastors that we don't talk about politics from the pulpit. We don't talk about it. We don't discuss it. And I think, have we raised up? Do you think we've ended up? We're just reaping what we've sown in the past. You don't talk about politics. You
Absolutely.
don't discuss abortion from the pulpit. You don't want to come out and talk about sin, talk about right and wrong. Say, hey, the Labor Party stands for this. This is not what the Bible teaches. Have you seen any of that? What's your experience with any of that?
Well, the what you say is true, but I strongly believe that the original government setup was a divine designed by God, and that's being changed now. Like that pastor said to you, political nature or political shouldn't be discussed from the pulpit. But how many churches now, how many denominations are allowing the rainbow, the LGBT, to influence the church? And that is nothing but a political movement. The activists for the LGBT are a political movement to change politics, to change public thinking. So I don't see that as having any credence anymore, not speaking political from the pulpit. Everything, God puts things in place for a reason. Well, that's my belief anyway. And it's as soon as we start moving away from that divine design of God's, it forfeits, governments start to forfeit their divine purpose. So we need to then start working on different ways. In our world today, the designing rulers, they're designing a culture that is starting to protect the immoral and forget about the moral in society. But that's just my view.
Yeah, 100%. So protecting the immoral, and this is why, like I said, reaping what we've sown with these. 20 years ago or so, we've put through all these people through Bible colleges who have learned, no, no, you don't talk about politics, or no, you don't want to confront, sin. You don't want to be too confrontational with people and saying, hey, calling things out, and you want to be quite a few years ago there was that seeker sensitive movement going on in churches. I remember a minister I knew talking about it when I was living in Melbourne, saying, "Oh, this is a good thing. This is what we should be doing. This seeker sensitive, and you could see that there were going to be problems with it. And so now we have churches that don't stand up, don't teach their congregations really about sin, about what's right and wrong, and how to look at government and what governments are doing objectively, and realize that some governments, okay, it's like what they were talking about in the United States. They can accept that a lot of Christians will accept, okay, Trump's not perfect. They can see all that. They know that Trump's not perfect and those leaders are, but you've got to pick the one, the best out of, you've only got to, in reality, two to choose from. So you got to stand up, you got to stand up for the one, vote for the one that stands up for more righteousness than the other one. And I think that's what they went for, and that's why they're reaping the benefits, in my opinion. Did you see the scare tactics that the Labor government were using about Trump? While we uh, always conflating what's his name Dutton with Trump and his ideals, and what'd you make of all that?
I think the Labor Party, they tried to relate anyone that had influence in the election other than their party with Trump. They were saying, oh, about Pauline Hanson saying "Make Australia Great Again." They were referring that to Trump. They were trying everything they could to bring a sort of discourse or a feeling of that's what we don't want here. When personally, Trump's done a good job with the country. He might be a vicious or a savage businessman to get where he is today. But when it comes to running a country, you've got to run it like a business. You've got to put everything in place so you are making things comfortable for the people that put you in that place, not sort of make everything where the criminals are unrestrained because they don't fear the consequences, but stop it. They don't fear the consequences of what or the lack of what's going to happen to them, things like that. You need someone who is tough to get in there and do the job. And that's exactly what Trump's doing. And Labor are afraid of that. And the first thing we saw with with Labor's win on Saturday night, was China, the CCP jumping up and down saying, yes, we're happy that Albo won. So what does that tell you?
There was an article that came out just before the election went through about and it was from the Northern Territory, and how the local Chinese people uh, were trying to were putting out the message that the LNP and Labor Party should reconsider their commitment to take the that port area off the
Yep,
of
Port of
that Chinese
Darwin.
company. Yeah. And I read it and I listened to the interview, and I thought, well, it just, to me, it smacked of Chinese propaganda. I'm thinking, this Chinese lady, this older Chinese lady, looking at her, I think, mate, there is no way she is not a puppet for the Chinese regime. And yeah, the influence that they've had, the Chinese have had, and it, to me, that was blatant. I mean, you actually
Yeah.
you don't even go out and use someone else. You use one of your own people
Well,
to come in
same
and
thing
spread
happened
this
in Monique
message.
Ryan's seat.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah. The Chinese people, they actually showed a news clip of one Chinese couple were told that by a Chinese company that had ties with the Chinese government, they have to get in there and push Monique Ryan to be elected. They had to go and help her, and they didn't understand why. But that's because Monique Ryan, as we know, is a teal,
Hmm.
and they're strongly in with the Greens and with Labor anyway.
Yep.
But it's there is so much political influence, and my greatest fear is with communist nations, they have the power to be able to say to the even Australian citizens of Chinese descent that, okay, if you don't do what we say, and this has been proven in the past, if you don't do what we say, your family here in your home country will suffer.
Hmm.
And that's the sort of influence we've got, and that's the sort of influence that Labor Party won't even look at, because look what they're importing.
Yeah, 100%. And
They're importing votes.
yep, importing votes. This is going to be concerning times. I far out. My head was swimming the next day trying to work out. Honestly, I couldn't work out. I was reading everything, looking at all this stuff, and What the other thing that stands out to me is, all the rhetoric that comes out, and the scare tactics. Everyone, you don't want to be, we don't want our nation to go down like America and go down this Trumpian path. And yet I look at it and think, think the complete opposite. Trump has, and Vance and all the people that he's surrounded himself with have done a bit of a course correction and taken them down a path where they will stand up and say, hey, there's only two genders. Men can't go into women's, all these things. And yet the
They
scare
speak the
tactics,
truth.
yeah, the truth,
It's the truth.
the truth does not. But I looked at Australia. I was trying to go through all the things that all the lies that Australians have been fed and taken hold of the last couple of years, and it just didn't surprise me. I thought, well, we aren't a nation that stands up, or that wants to stand up for biblical principles at all. We're not a nation that stands up for our fellow Aussie. We see so many Aussies, like you said, who are homeless, who are struggling, can't even feed themselves properly. Um, and yet no one really cares or seems to care. Or everyone just buys the rhetoric coming, the advertising coming from the Labor and the Greens, and um, it, but for me, hard to comprehend how we've gone into this time where people believe such blatant lies.
Well, it starts with the education system.
Yep.
They're being lied to from preschool up now. It's not a true education system anymore. It's an indoctrination system.
Okay. So is that how we got onto, if we can segue into something else,
Yeah.
lies? If is that how we got onto this pathway where people believe the lies about what do you call it? My mind's gone blank. The environmental issues, and we need green, what they call green energy, because okay, what was it? Spain and another country just the other day, complete blackouts. They've gone into blackouts because they rely too much
Yep.
on that kind of energy. And yet, Australia, we still seem to be eating up the rhetoric that, oh, this is what we need. The whole world's going to go into, you know, be a complete basket case if we don't learn to switch off the lights, if we don't go into what they call green energy. And yet, it only takes, a little bit of investigating, and you can see that this so-called green energy is not green. Is that how? How did we end up in this place where we believe these lies?
Because the liars are very good at what they do. And when there's so much money involved with green energy, there are people making so much money out of the green energy um, the direction, and some of those are politicians
Mm,
in hold shares and things like that with the green energy companies. We've seen that in the past in Australia alone. But it's if you say it comes down to there was a saying years ago that I remember that if you say something enough to people, it's like I think the Chinese whisper or something like that. You
yep.
say something enough, people will believe it. And if you say it with conviction, people will believe it. Now, that's we if you look into the green energy, like nuclear energy is clean these days, it's safe these days, but it's going to bring the prices down, and it's ultimately going to be cheaper than what we're paying. We're supposed to be paying a lot less for our power bills now, according to Albo. But since they've introduced these renewable energy and green energy and things like that, power bills are going up. Like my power bill is close to $1,000 every quarter.
Mm.
Now, I don't know how I'm affording that. I don't know how many families are affording that.
Uh,
And it's only getting worse. So they're very good at the lies they make, they bring across to people, and they try and sugarcoat it in ways that make people feel guilty if they don't follow the lies.
yeah. The
Stumped you there,
lies.
Joe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just find it hard to wrap my head around how we've gone down this road, and we believe just to me, it's obvious lies. I honestly have been struggling with it because I sit there going, well, surely people look these things up and read for themselves, and they can see they can see that
That's the
these.
trouble. That's the trouble. They don't though. They go to universities and they get told what they're to believe, what they're to think, but they've gone away with, or they've done away with, there's any personal consequences for personal actions, that you have to listen to what we say. Don't go out and research it yourself because you'll only find this out anyway. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the government institutions now are a source of lies, and they're the protector of those liars. They 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 praise the liars that are teaching, or that are telling us these lies, and the that makes the government the enemy of the truth. Now, it praises the evil and persecutes the good in society. And that's our biggest problem now. And that comes down to constant lies. We saw that during the election campaign from Labor.
Okay, okay. I don't think we haven't solved any problems this morning. I feel like I'm
No,
just
we
venting.
haven't.
I'm just venting
Yeah.
a bit because I'm so frustrated. What else do you have? Anything else to that you need to get off?
Well, personally, I think we're seeing a lot more. We saw a massive amount of Gen Z and millennials vote this time, which has given us the reaction, or the election that we weren't expecting.
Yep.
But what I want to say to I know so many Christian youth out there who just they don't know what to do. So I just want to let them know, don't stand back in the background. Just you need to stand up for your faith. You need to voice your opinion. You need to take Jesus Christ everywhere you go to let people know that this isn't acceptable, that this isn't the way things should be going. And just Christianity is being forced into the background, and we need the young Christians of today to bring it forward and to speak to their friends about it and things like that, because we need change in this country. We can't keep going the way we're going.
Yeah, because Australia, who was it? Someone had written on like a reply to one of my posts saying how Australia has kowtowed to China. We've basically bent the knee to Islamic ideology and radicals. When it comes to the immigration, 2 million, was it 2 million or 1 million in 2 years? And so Australia as a whole we've completely changed. We've walked away from the ideals that Australia was built upon, and standing up for our fellow Aussies, helping helping our fellow Aussies, no matter the color of your skin or where you may have come from. You're in Australia now. You claim to be Australian. You've taken on our values and standing up for each other and standing against and voicing to the government, hey, you shouldn't be doing these things. You shouldn't be doing these. These aren't right. These things aren't right. But it seems like our whole nation has changed its values, and we've gotten very I don't know, just very, very slack in our thinking. We don't want to stand for anything. I don't see us as a nation that particularly stands for anything, and we seem to fall for every lie that our political parties tell us. And like I said
Yep.
to you, like I was saying to you before, but I was reading the why it struck me so much about Albanese leading the Mardi Gras parade. When I was reading Leviticus 18, and God lays out, this is the laws with sexual immorality and why you shouldn't go down this path of sexual immorality. And he's saying the reason why the people are losing the land, it's not because it was because they'd gone down this path of sexual immorality. And so, and to me, I realized, I read it, and it's the first time I'd realized, okay, so they're actually losing the land because they weren't Christian people, to put it that way, or people who knew about or followed the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they knew very well how to sin and how to do all these disgusting things. And God says, well, these are all the things that you shouldn't be doing, the path of sexual immorality that you shouldn't be doing. And the reason why they're losing the land is because they've taken it all on board, and this is the pathway that they've taken. And I look at it and think we've now got leaders who reject God and embrace sexual immorality and tell us all this is fine, this is good. If you want to do whatever it is you want to do, you can do it. You can go and celebrate it on the streets, and there is nothing, the biblical principles be gone. There is nothing. There is nothing that you should not be able to do if you want, whatever your blackened heart wants to do. It's just been bugging my mind. I keep looking about that vision of Albanese leading the parade, hand up. Whoo, look at this. We're going. I think this is this why the land is basically spewing the people, pushing back against the people, because it's a biblical principle. If we embrace our leaders embrace sexual impurity, sexual immorality, this is what happens to a land. Am I wrong? If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
Well, no. Well, it's straight away. It's as what you say. It brings it back to our discussion earlier about Albo being in that Mardi Gras and those photos of him in there. That brings it immediately to a political nature. Now, in Revelation, it speaks about the corrupt state, and we're seeing that more and more in our modern times. Like, it's always been there from ancient empires like Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and today we're seeing it in Nazi Germany, China, Soviet Union, and North Korea especially. They're ungodly governments, and they're consistently seeking to usurp God's authority and persecute his people. Now, they don't care how they go about that. They just want to push God's authority to the background. And even in subtle ways, the corrupt state continues to exert that influence today on us. Like Australian Labor like to promote any anti-Christian policies that they can, and they enact legislation contrary to biblical principles and biblical values. And that is where we're going wrong. Australia is a Judeo-Christian nation, as you said to begin with, and we've grown from the start on those biblical principles, biblical justice system, and things like that, knowing what is right and wrong. That's something you spoke about as well, knowing what is right and wrong. And we're not getting taught that these days. We're getting taught that there is no right, there is no wrong. You can do whatever you like. There's no consequences for you. And that's where we're going wrong.
Okay. Hey, we're going to be running out of time very shortly, so sorry, we have to wrap things up. Great discussion. Even just you bring out a lot of things that I haven't thought of. What have you got coming up? What videos? What have you been thinking about that you're going to be bringing up in your own channel?
I've recorded a video. I'm just editing it now about my take about the election, and principally how Christians need to see that even though Labor and all these evil policies and that are in place, or will be in place, this is actually a blessing for us Christians to be able to find our feet, to stand strong, and to reclaim our faith to people, and not to go and hide away like we were made to do during COVID when the churches were locked and we couldn't fellowship, we couldn't worship. We're not going to let that happen again. We need to get out there and we need to proclaim our faith, and we're not going to get pushed over anymore.
Well said. Very well said. Okay. Have to wrap it up. Thanks very much, Brian from A Man of Faith Ministries, for joining me today. Please make sure you jump on his channel and like and share, and join his community. It's awesome to hear. And I reckon the little daily devotionals are pretty thumping. They're pretty good to listen to as well. Thanks very much for joining me, mate. Mate, this is all our opinions. Just like to share what we think. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jay Fallon. This is Brian Main, and thanks for joining us on the Slippery Slope and Man of Faith Ministries. Thanks, Brian.
God bless.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher. I'm on fire because nothing